My name is Victoria Sterling, and 6 months ago my mother told me she was giving my father's entire inheritance to my stepsister because I wasn't responsible enough to handle real money. Last week, that same stepsister discovered that the company she thought was just another failed startup attempt had been acquired by a Fortune 500 corporation for $47 million, and that I owned it entirely. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Standing in the marble lobby of Meridian Industries headquarters, watching my stepsister Natalie's expression shift from condescension to disbelief as the acquisition announcement played on the financial news networks, I realized this moment represented far more than personal vindication. This was the culmination of every family dinner where my business ventures had been dismissed as playing entrepreneur. Every holiday gathering where my achievements were overshadowed by Natalie's conventional career milestones, and every conversation where my mother suggested I should follow my stepsister's example if I wanted to achieve real success. The acquisition terms were undeniable: $47 million in cash and equity for Sterling Analytics, the data intelligence platform I had built from my studio apartment while my family assumed I was struggling to pay rent. The press release that morning had detailed the strategic value of proprietary algorithms I had developed for predicting consumer behavior patterns, technology that major corporations were willing to pay unprecedented amounts to access exclusively. Natalie stood frozen in the executive lobby, her perfectly manicured hands clutching the inheritance paperwork she had brought to discuss investment strategies for the $2.8 million our father had left behind. The same inheritance my mother had redirected to her stepdaughter 3 months earlier, accompanied by a lecture about fiscal responsibility and the importance of supporting family members who demonstrate sound judgment. The irony was magnificent in its precision. While Natalie had been planning how to invest inherited wealth she had done nothing to earn, I had been building something that would generate more value in annual licensing fees than the entire inheritance would produce over decades of conservative portfolio management. The algorithms that powered Sterling Analytics were projected to generate recurring revenue exceeding $12 million annually, creating sustainable wealth that would compound rather than diminish over time. The financial news anchor continued explaining the acquisition's significance for the artificial intelligence industry, noting how Sterling Analytics had revolutionized predictive modeling through innovative approaches that established players had failed to develop internally. The report emphasized the youth and vision of the company's founder, a 28-year-old entrepreneur who had built market-leading technology while competitors focused on incremental improvements to existing systems. My mother arrived 20 minutes later, summoned by Natalie's frantic phone call requesting an emergency family meeting to discuss new developments that required immediate attention. Helen Sterling Morrison entered the lobby with the same determined efficiency she brought to managing her interior design consultancy, prepared to mediate whatever crisis had prompted her stepdaughter's urgent request for intervention. The moment of recognition occurred when the building's executive assistant approached our small gathering with professional courtesy, addressing me directly as the scheduled appointment for the afternoon's merger finalization meetings. "Sterling, the legal teams are assembled in conference room A whenever you're ready to proceed with the document review." My mother's expression shifted through multiple phases of comprehension as the reality of the situation became undeniable. The building we were standing in belonged to my company. The acquisition announcement, playing on multiple screens, featured my photograph and biography. The urgent family meeting Natalie had requested was taking place in the headquarters of a technology company I had built while living in a 600-square-foot apartment that my family considered evidence of my professional limitation. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds before my mother found words that reflected her struggle to reconcile this new information with her established understanding of my capabilities and achievements. "Victoria, I don't understand. You said you were working on a software project, not running a company worth..." She paused, clearly calculating figures that exceeded her previous conception of what constituted significant wealth. Natalie's response revealed the depth of her assumption that any success I achieved must be temporary or exaggerated. "There must be some mistake. Victoria works from her apartment. She doesn't have employees or investors. She gestured toward the executive lobby with its contemporary art installations and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the downtown business district. The acquisition documentation that my legal team had prepared for the afternoon signing included detailed financial statements that chronicled Sterling Analytics' growth from initial concept to market-leading platform. Revenue figures showed progression from $0 to $8.4 million annually over 36 months, with profit margins exceeding 60%, due to the scalable nature of algorithm licensing and minimal operational overhead. More significantly, the technology assessment report prepared by the acquiring corporation's due diligence teams had assigned values to individual components of my intellectual property portfolio that exceeded the entire inheritance my family had considered substantial enough to justify careful management and family oversight. The consumer behavior prediction algorithms alone were valued at $18 million, representing innovation that established technology companies had been unable to replicate through internal development effort. The personal cost of building this success while maintaining family relationships had been substantial but largely invisible to those who never asked detailed questions about my work or expressed curiosity about the technical challenges I was solving. 18-hour workdays, weekend programming sessions, and months of surviving on minimal revenue while developing market-ready algorithms had created the foundation for extraordinary achievement. But this effort remained hidden behind my family's assumptions about my limitations and prospects. During the most challenging development phases, when competitors with substantially larger resources were attempting to solve similar problems through traditional approaches, I had worked alone in my apartment while my family discussed Natalie's promotion opportunities and salary negotiations at her marketing firm. The contrast between their concerns about her annual performance reviews and my focus on building proprietary technology that could transform entire industries reflected fundamental differences in ambition and risk tolerance that had never been explicitly acknowledged. The breakthrough that ultimately enabled the acquisition had occurred 6 months earlier, precisely when my mother was deciding to redirect my inheritance toward Natalie's financial portfolio. Traditional analysis approaches had identified general trends and seasonal patterns that guided basic inventory planning. Yet these methodologies failed to predict individual customer behavior with sufficient accuracy to support personalized marketing campaigns or optimize product recommendations. The existing research suggested that outdoor enthusiasts purchased equipment based on seasonal activities and weather conditions, but transaction data revealed substantially more complex decision-making patterns that incorporated factors traditional research had not considered. The analytical challenge was identifying algorithmic approaches that could process transaction histories, demographic characteristics, and seasonal variables to generate accurate predictions for individual customer purchasing decisions. Previous attempts using conventional statistical methods had achieved limited success, suggesting that the relationships between variables were too complex for traditional analytical techniques to capture effectively. The insight that changed everything emerged while experimenting with machine learning algorithms that had proven effective for pattern recognition in financial services and telecommunications applications. These computational approaches were designed to identify complex relationships within large datasets without requiring predetermined assumptions about which variables influenced outcomes. The algorithms could discover patterns that human analysts might miss while generating predictions based on mathematical relationships rather than theoretical models about consumer behavior. The first experimental application involved analyzing purchasing patterns for hiking equipment among customers who had made multiple transactions over extended periods. Traditional analysis suggested that customers purchased gear based on seasonal hiking schedules and equipment replacement cycles, yet the machine learning algorithms identified substantially different patterns that incorporated factors including weather predictions, social media activity, and peer purchasing behavior within local outdoor communities. The computational analysis revealed that hiking equipment purchases were influenced by complex combinations of variables that operated on different timescales and responded to environmental factors that conventional market research had not examined systematically. Individual customers made purchasing decisions based on anticipated activities, social influences, and subconscious responses to seasonal changes that created predictable patterns when analyzed using appropriate mathematical techniques. More significantly, the algorithms could identify customer segments that behaved according to different decision-making patterns, enabling targeted marketing strategies that addressed specific psychological factors rather than broad demographic characteristics. This capability represented a fundamental advancement over traditional market research that assumed all customers within demographic categories responded similarly to marketing messages and product offering. The validation process involved testing algorithmic predictions against actual sales outcomes for subsequent months, comparing accuracy rates with conventional forecasting methods that Mountain Peak had been using for strategic planning. The machine learning approaches achieved prediction accuracy rates exceeding 82% for individual customer purchases, compared to conventional methods that typically achieved accuracy rates between 48 and 55% when tested against actual transaction outcomes. The implications extended far beyond improving inventory management for a single regional retailer. The algorithms demonstrated that consumer behavior prediction could be revolutionized through computational approaches that analyzed actual purchasing patterns rather than relying on survey responses and focus group feedback that often failed to predict real-world decision-making accurately. During the validation period, I realized that the algorithmic approaches I had developed could be applied to virtually any industry where companies needed to understand and predict customer behavior. Retail operations, subscription services, financial products, entertainment platforms, and numerous other business categories faced similar challenges in understanding why customers made specific purchasing decisions and predicting future behavior patterns. The technology created opportunities for developing proprietary analytical platforms that could be licensed to multiple companies while generating recurring revenue through software subscriptions and consulting services. Enterprise clients would pay substantial fees for access to prediction capabilities that could improve marketing effectiveness, reduce customer acquisition costs, and optimize product development strategies based on actual consumer behavior patterns rather than theoretical assumptions. The competitive landscape analysis revealed that established market research firms continued relying on traditional methodologies despite their documented limitations, while technology companies developing machine learning applications had not focused systematically on consumer behavior prediction problems. This created market opportunities for entrepreneurs willing to bridge the gap between proven computational techniques and commercial applications that addressed real business challenges. The financial projections that emerged from this analysis indicated potential for building substantial recurring revenue through algorithm licensing agreements with enterprise clients who needed accurate consumer behavior predictions for strategic planning. Conservative estimates suggested that effective algorithms could generate annual licensing fees exceeding several $100,000 per major client, while serving multiple industries would create diversified revenue streams that supported sustainable business growth. The strategic question was whether to commercialize these capabilities through data trend solutions, which would provide established client relationships and operational infrastructure, or establish an independent company that could develop proprietary technology without organizational constraints that might limit innovation or market expansion opportunities. The decision would determine whether the algorithms remained consulting tools for existing clients or became the foundation for building a technology platform with substantial intellectual property value. After 3 months of analysis and preparation, I concluded that the consumer behavior prediction algorithms represented the foundation for building a technology company that could revolutionize how businesses understand and influence customer decision-making. The opportunity required independent development to realize its full potential while creating intellectual property assets that could generate sustainable competitive advantage. The market research consistently indicated that demand for accurate consumer behavior prediction was accelerating throughout multiple industries, driven by digital commerce growth and marketing complexity that exceeded the capabilities of traditional research methodology. Companies were struggling to understand customer behavior patterns in online environments where traditional research approaches provided limited insight into actual decision-making process. The algorithms I had developed could address these challenges while creating value propositions that justified premium pricing for access to prediction capabilities that substantially exceeded conventional market research effectiveness. Enterprise clients would recognize the strategic value of improving marketing campaign performance while reducing customer acquisition costs through more accurate targeting and personalization strategy. The decision to establish Sterling Analytics represented commitment to building something that could transform how businesses approach consumer behavior analysis while creating substantial value for clients who needed competitive advantages through superior customer understanding. The vision extended beyond improving existing market research methodologies to developing entirely new approaches that would set industry standards for prediction accuracy and analytical sophistication. The foundation was established through recognizing that machine learning technologies could be applied to traditional business problems in ways that created extraordinary value for companies willing to invest in advanced analytical capability. While competitors focused on incremental improvements to conventional approaches, I identified opportunities to develop fundamentally superior methodologies that would obsolete traditional market research while enabling new forms of customer insight and strategic planning. The algorithms represented more than technical innovation. They provided the foundation for building sustainable competitive advantages in rapidly evolving technology markets, where intellectual property protection and continuous improvement would create barriers to competitive replication. The strategic positioning would enable Sterling Analytics to establish market leadership while generating licensing revenue that could fund continued research and development. The commercial opportunity was compelling, but successful execution would require capabilities in business development, enterprise sales, and technology platform management that extended far beyond the analytical expertise I had developed through academic research and consulting experience. Building a technology company would demand learning new skills while managing complex challenges that affected strategy, operations, and client relationships simultaneously. The moment of recognition had crystallized into commitment for building something extraordinary that could generate value for clients, while creating sustainable wealth through intellectual property development and platform license. The foundation was established. The next challenge would be transforming research capabilities into commercial success while building organizational infrastructure that could support enterprise client relationships and continued technological advancement. The journey from algorithmic innovation to technology entrepreneurship would test every assumption about market demand, execution capabilities, and the willingness of established companies to invest in analytical approaches that contradicted conventional wisdom about consumer behavior research. Success would require validating that superior technology could overcome organizational inertia and competitive resistance from established players who had substantial investments in traditional methodology. The first person I shared my vision with was my mother, Helen Sterling Morrison, during what I had anticipated would be a routine family dinner at her downtown Denver townhouse. The conversation took place in her meticulously appointed dining room, surrounded by the interior design elements she had carefully curated to reflect her professional expertise and personal aesthetic preference. I had prepared a concise presentation explaining the consumer behavior prediction algorithms and the commercial opportunity they represented, expecting curiosity about the technical innovation and market potential. Instead, my mother's response reflected immediate skepticism about abandoning stable employment at Data Trend Solutions to pursue what she characterized as speculative technology development with uncertain market demand. Her concerns focused on practical considerations that demonstrated her fundamental misunderstanding of both the technological breakthrough I had achieved and the substantial commercial opportunity it represented for companies struggling with inadequate consumer behavior analysis. The conversation revealed deep-seated assumptions about appropriate career progression that prioritized conventional employment security over entrepreneurial creation. My mother had built her interior design consultancy through incremental client acquisition and reputation development over 15 years, following traditional business growth patterns that emphasized steady advancement rather than breakthrough innovation that could transform industry standards. Her questions reflected this perspective, focusing on immediate revenue generation timelines, established competitor responses, and the resources required for transitioning from consulting services to technology platform development. These concerns were entirely reasonable from the perspective of conventional business planning, yet they missed the fundamental value proposition that made Sterling Analytics potentially revolutionary rather than simply another market research consulting. Learning applications for consumer behavior prediction encountered immediate resistance based on my mother's limited understanding of algorithmic capabilities and her assumption that traditional market research methodologies represented the appropriate baseline for comparison. She questioned whether computational approaches could provide insights that experienced market researchers might miss, suggesting that human judgment remained essential for interpreting customer behavior patterns accurately. More significantly, my mother expressed concerns about abandoning a secure position with data trend solutions to pursue independent technology development that would require substantial financial investment before generating any revenue. Her risk assessment reflected conservative approaches to career management that prioritized preserving existing achievements over pursuing opportunities that could generate transformational outcomes but carried proportionally higher uncertainty. The conversation concluded with my mother recommending that I continue developing the algorithms as a side project while maintaining employment at Data Trend Solutions, allowing me to validate market demand before committing fully to independent business development. This suggestion reflected practical wisdom about minimizing downside risk, yet it demonstrated fundamental mental understanding of the competitive dynamics that would determine whether Sterling Analytics could establish market leadership or become another incremental improvement to existing analytical services. 2 weeks later, I presented the Sterling Analytics concept to my stepsister Natalie during her monthly visit to Denver from her marketing position in Chicago. The meeting occurred at her preferred upscale restaurant in the Cherry Creek district, where she typically conducted informal business discussions with colleagues and clients visiting from other markets. I had expected that her professional experience with marketing campaigns and customer targeting would create natural appreciation for analytical tools that could improve campaign effectiveness and conversion rate. Natalie's response surprised me with its immediate focus on competitive positioning relative to established market research firms that served major corporations through comprehensive service offerings and long-term client relationships. Her analysis emphasized the organizational advantages that companies like Nielsen and McKinsey possessed through their scale, reputation, and established client network, suggesting that independent technology development could not compete effectively against resources and market presence that had been developed over decades. The conversation revealed that Natalie viewed business success through the lens of her experience at Morrison Marketing Group, where advancement depended on managing established client relationships and demonstrating incremental improvements to conventional campaign strategy. Her questions focused on how Sterling Analytics would acquire enterprise clients without the credibility and track record that established firms leveraged for business development and contract negotiation. Her skepticism extended to fundamental assumptions about whether algorithmic approaches could provide insights that experienced marketing professionals might overlook through traditional research methodologies and strategic analysis. Natalie suggested that consumer behavior remained too complex and variable for computational analysis to capture the nuanced understanding that human expertise provided through direct client interaction and market observation. The discussion became particularly pointed when Natalie questioned whether I possessed the business development capabilities necessary for establishing relationships with enterprise clients who had substantial investments in existing market research partnerships. Her assessment reflected accurate understanding of the sales challenges that technology startups faced when competing against established service providers, yet it demonstrated limited appreciation for the competitive advantages that superior technology could create when properly positioned and marketed. Natalie's conclusion was that Sterling Analytics represented interesting technology development that might provide consulting opportunities with smaller companies, but that competing effectively against established market research firms would require resources and expertise that were unrealistic for independent development. She recommended leveraging the algorithms to enhance services within data trend solutions rather than attempting to build a standalone technology platform that would face overwhelming competitive challenges. The family resistance became more pronounced during our quarterly gathering at my mother's townhouse, where both my stepfather, Richard Morrison, and my stepsister united in expressing concerns about the wisdom of abandoning stable employment to pursue technology entrepreneurship in an uncertain market environment. The conversation occurred in my mother's living room, with its carefully arranged seating that encouraged collaborative discussion while maintaining the formal atmosphere she preferred for important family decisions. Richard's perspective reflected his experience as a senior partner at Morrison & Associates, a traditional consulting firm that had achieved sustained success through conservative client service strategies and measured business expansion over 23 years. His questions focused on market analysis methodologies I had used to validate demand for advanced consumer behavior prediction services, suggesting that entrepreneurial optimism might be clouding realistic assessment of competitive dynamics and implementation challenges. The discussion revealed fundamental differences in risk tolerance and opportunity evaluation that had remained hidden during previous family conversations about career development and business strategy. Richard valued predictable growth strategies that built incrementally on established capabilities, while I believed that breakthrough innovation required accepting uncertainty and developing new competencies, rather than waiting until all risks could be eliminated through extensive analysis. His recommendation was to conduct comprehensive market research before making any commitment to independent business development, including competitive analysis of established firms, customer interviews with potential enterprise clients, and financial projections that incorporated realistic assumptions about customer acquisition costs and revenue development timelines. This approach reflected sound business planning principles, yet it would require investment of time and resources that could eliminate the competitive timing advantages that made Sterling Analytics viable. The family consensus that emerged from this discussion was that my algorithmic research represented valuable intellectual property that should be monetized through partnerships with established firms rather than independent technology platform development. They recommended licensing the algorithms to data trend solutions or other market research companies that possessed the operational infrastructure and client relationships necessary for commercializing advanced analytical capability. This suggestion reflected practical wisdom about leveraging existing organizational capabilities while avoiding the substantial risks associated with technology entrepreneurship. Yet it would eliminate the potential for building sustainable competitive advantages and intellectual property value that represented the primary strategic opportunity. Licensing arrangements would generate immediate revenue while transferring the most valuable aspects of the innovation to organizations that had not invested in developing the underlying technology. The most challenging resistance came from my father's perspective, delivered through a carefully considered conversation during one of our monthly breakfast meetings at his favorite downtown restaurant. Robert Sterling had built his consulting practice through systematic client relationship development and had observed numerous technology ventures that had failed despite promising initial concepts and adequate technical capability. His concerns focused on implementation challenges that extended beyond algorithm development to include enterprise sales processes, customer support operation, and competitive responses from established players who had substantial resources for developing alternative approaches or acquiring emerging competitors. These observations reflected accurate understanding of the business development challenges that affected technology startups, particularly those competing in markets dominated by established service providers. My father's analysis emphasized that successful technology commercialization required expertise in multiple disciplines, simultaneously, including product development, marketing strategy, sales operations, and customer relationship management. His assessment was that few entrepreneurs possessed comprehensive capabilities across all necessary areas, suggesting that partnership arrangements or employment with established firms represented more realistic approaches to monetizing technological innovation. The conversation concluded with my father recommending that I continue developing the algorithms while exploring licensing opportunities that would provide revenue and market validation without requiring the substantial financial and time investments associated with building independent operational infrastructure. This approach would preserve the option for future independent development while minimizing immediate risk and resource requirement. The accumulated family resistance created psychological pressure that complemented practical concerns about abandoning stable employment to pursue uncertain entrepreneurial opportunities. The people whose opinions I valued most had identified legitimate challenges and alternative approaches that appeared to offer better risk-adjusted returns than independent technology platform development. However, the market research that had motivated my original analysis continued to support the conclusion that consumer behavior prediction represented an extraordinary commercial opportunity that required proprietary technology development to realize its full potential. Licensing arrangements would provide immediate validation and revenue, while transferring the most valuable strategic assets to organizations that could then compete directly against any future independent development effort. The decision point had arrived, where I would either preserve family relationships and pursue conservative monetization strategy, or commit to building something extraordinary despite the skepticism of people whose judgment I had learned to trust through years of collaborative decision-making and strategic planning. The choice would determine whether the algorithms remained consulting tools for existing market research firms or became the foundation for revolutionizing how businesses approach consumer behavior analysis and strategic planning. The decision that would define my entire future crystallized during a solitary weekend at my studio apartment in March 2021, surrounded by algorithm documentation, market research reports, and financial projections that represented 6 months of intensive analysis following my family's collective recommendation to pursue conservative licensing strategies rather than independent technology platform development. The accumulated evidence consistently supported my original assessment that Sterling Analytics represented an extraordinary commercial opportunity. Yet implementing this vision would require disappointing people whose opinions had shaped my professional development and personal decision-making throughout my career. The analytical framework I had developed for evaluating this choice involved weighing potential financial returns against relationship costs, professional reputation, and the psychological challenges associated with pursuing contrarian strategies despite sustained opposition from trusted advisors. The implementation planning began with developing comprehensive strategies for establishing Sterling Analytics as an independent technology company without the support systems that collaborative approaches typically provide through established organizational infrastructure and shared resource allocation. This process required learning capabilities in business development, enterprise sales, and customer relationship management that complemented the technical expertise I had developed through algorithmic research and data analysis experience. Risk mitigation strategies addressed the legitimate concerns that family members had raised while maintaining commitment to independent technology platform development. Contingency planning included alternative revenue generation approaches through consulting services if enterprise sales proved more challenging than projected, while financial management protocols ensured adequate runway for sustained business development efforts without premature resource depletion. The emotional preparation involved developing psychological resilience for extended periods of uncertainty and potential criticism from family members, who would monitor progress while anticipating outcomes that validated their preference for conservative licensing strategy. Entrepreneurial success requires internal motivation that sustains effort through challenges when external support systems provide skepticism rather than encouragement. Communication strategy establishment determined approaches for maintaining necessary family relationships while pursuing independent action that contradicted their collective recommendation. Professional boundary creation became essential for managing competing priorities without compromising either family connections or business development requirements that demanded focused attention and resource allocation. The final decision emerged from recognizing that extraordinary opportunities typically require choices that appear unreasonable to conventional analysis, while offering potential returns that justify accepting substantial uncertainty and relationship costs. The algorithms I had developed represented foundation technology for revolutionizing consumer behavior analysis across multiple industries, creating value propositions that extended far beyond incremental improvements to existing market research methodology. On March 15, I submitted formal resignation to Data Trend Solutions, effective April 1, providing adequate notice while enabling immediate transition to full-time Sterling Analytics development. The decision letter emphasized appreciation for learning opportunities and professional development, while explaining that independent technology platform creation required dedicated focus that was incompatible with continued employment responsibility. The resignation conversation with my supervisor, Jennifer Walsh, revealed professional respect for my analytical capabilities, combined with skepticism about technology entrepreneurship prospects in competitive markets dominated by established service providers. Her recommendation was to maintain consulting relationships with Data Trend Solutions, while developing Sterling Analytics, enabling gradual transition that would preserve employment options if independent development proved unsuccessful. This suggestion reflected practical wisdom about risk management, while demonstrating limited understanding of the competitive dynamics that required exclusive focus on technology platform development, rather than divided attention between established employment and entrepreneurial venture. Consulting arrangements would create conflicts of interest while preventing the concentrated effort necessary for achieving breakthrough market position. The notification conversations with family members generated responses that ranged from supportive concern to explicit disapproval regarding abandonment of stable employment for speculative technology development, with uncertain revenue generation timeline. These discussions confirmed that independent action would strain relationships that had been based on collaborative decision-making and shared risk assessment approach. My mother expressed particular concern about financial sustainability during the development period, when Sterling Analytics would require substantial investment before generating any revenue. Her questions focused on personal budget management and contingency planning if enterprise sales proved more difficult than projected, reflecting maternal protective instincts combined with practical business experience about cash flow challenges that affected independent consultancies during initial development phase. Natalie's response emphasized competitive risks associated with challenging established market research firms that possessed substantial resources for developing alternative approaches or acquiring emerging competitors. Her analysis reflected accurate understanding of industry dynamics, while underestimating the competitive advantages that superior technology could create when properly positioned for enterprise clients seeking breakthrough analytical capability. My father's reaction combined professional respect for my analytical capabilities with skepticism about business development challenges that extended beyond algorithm creation to include enterprise sales processes, customer relationship management, and operational infrastructure development. His assessment was that successful technology commercialization required expertise across multiple disciplines that few individual entrepreneurs possessed comprehensively. The accumulated family resistance created psychological pressure that tested my conviction about market opportunities and execution capabilities, while providing motivation to prove that independent technology development could achieve outcomes that licensing arrangements would never generate. Opposition from trusted advisors often indicates recognition of extraordinary opportunities that conventional analysis cannot evaluate accurately. With intellectual property assignments that transferred algorithm ownership from personal research to corporate assets that could support future investment and partnership opportunities. Legal infrastructure development included trademark applications, patent preparation, and operating agreements that provided foundation for scaling operations and attracting enterprise clients. The business bank account opening required personal financial guarantees that demonstrated commitment, while creating accountability for achieving revenue generation objectives within projected timeline. Initial capitalization included personal savings accumulated during employment, with data trend solutions, plus proceeds from liquidating investment accounts that had been intended for conventional retirement plans. The transformation from employee to entrepreneur marked crossing the threshold from theoretical analysis to practical implementation, where success would depend on execution capabilities rather than analytical accuracy. Every subsequent decision would either validate the assessment that Sterling Analytics represented extraordinary opportunity or confirm family predictions about the wisdom of pursuing conservative licensing strategies through established organizational partnerships. The foundation was established through recognition that breakthrough innovation typically requires accepting uncertainty and relationship costs that conventional risk management approaches are designed to avoid. The algorithms represented more than technical achievement. They provided the basis for building sustainable competitive advantages in rapidly evolving technology markets, where intellectual property protection and continuous improvement would create barriers to competitive replication. The journey from algorithmic research to technology entrepreneurship would test every assumption about market demand, customer acquisition, competitive positioning, while requiring development of business capabilities that complemented the technical expertise I had developed through academic research and professional analytical experience. Success would validate that superior technology could overcome organizational advantages that established firms possessed through scale, reputation, and existing client relationships. The first morning of independent operations at Sterling Analytics began at 5:30 a.m. in my studio apartment, which had been transformed into a technology development center complete with multiple monitors, server equipment, and whiteboards covered with algorithmic flowcharts and client acquisition strategy. The transition from theoretical planning to practical implementation revealed immediate gaps between analytical projections and operational realities that would test every assumption about market demand, competitive positioning, and execution capability. The initial challenge emerged within the first week when I discovered that enterprise software development required substantially different approaches than the academic research and consulting applications I had created during my tenure at Data Trend Solutions. Client implementations demanded security protocols, scalability architectures, and user interface designs that exceeded the capabilities of algorithms optimized for analytical accuracy rather than commercial deployment across diverse organizational environments. The technical infrastructure requirements alone consumed the first month of development time while revealing cost implications that had not been adequately projected during the planning phase. Cloud computing services that provided adequate processing power for enterprise-scale consumer behavior analysis required monthly expenditures that exceeded my initial estimates by 47%. Database management systems capable of handling transaction datasets from major retailers demanded licensing fees and technical expertise that extended beyond my previous experience with smaller analytical projects. More significant, the regulatory compliance requirements for handling consumer transaction data introduced legal complexities that required consultation with specialized attorneys who understood data privacy regulations, intellectual property protection, and commercial software licensing agreements. These professional services consumed financial resources while delaying product development timelines that had been based on technical considerations without adequate attention to legal and compliance factors. The learning curve for enterprise software development proved steeper than anticipated when I realized that successful commercial deployment required expertise in system administration, network security, and user experience design that complemented the machine learning and statistical analysis capabilities I had developed through academic research and consulting experience. Every technical challenge revealed additional specialized knowledge areas that demanded immediate attention while maintaining progress toward revenue generation objectives. The customer discovery process began with contacting potential enterprise clients who had expressed preliminary interest during my consulting work with Data Trend Solutions. Yet these conversations revealed fundamental misconceptions about market demand and competitive positioning that threatened the entire business model. Decision-makers at major retailers possessed limited understanding of machine learning applications for consumer behavior analysis, requiring extensive education before they could evaluate the competitive advantages that Sterling Analytics algorithms provided relative to conventional market research methodology. The sales cycle complexity exceeded projections when I discovered that enterprise software purchases required approval processes involving multiple stakeholders across technology, marketing, and financial departments who evaluated vendor proposals according to different criteria and timeline expectations. Chief marketing officers focused on campaign effectiveness improvements and customer acquisition cost reductions, while chief technology officers emphasized security protocols and integration requirements with existing data management systems. Financial decision-makers demanded detailed return on investment calculations that demonstrated quantifiable business value within specific timeframes. Yet the benefits of improved consumer behavior prediction often required extended implementation periods before measurable results became apparent through improved marketing campaign performance and customer lifetime value optimization. The disconnect between immediate cost considerations and longer-term value creation created objection patterns that required sophisticated presentation strategies and case study documentation. The competitive response from established market research firms manifested more rapidly than anticipated when several major players began developing their own machine learning initiatives after observing Sterling Analytics client presentations and technical demonstrations. Nielsen announced a strategic partnership with a technology consulting firm to enhance their consumer behavior analysis capabilities, while McKinsey established an internal artificial intelligence team focused on advanced analytical services for retail sector clients. These competitive developments created urgency around establishing market leadership through superior algorithmic performance and strategic client relationships before established players could leverage their organizational advantages to replicate the technological innovations that provided Sterling Analytics' initial competitive differentiation. The window for capturing enterprise clients who would serve as references for subsequent business development efforts was narrowing as alternatives became available through familiar vendor relationships. The resource consumption patterns during the first 6 months of operations revealed fundamental differences between theoretical projections and practical implementation requirements that affected both timeline expectations and financial sustainability calculations. Algorithm refinement for enterprise applications required continuous testing and optimization cycles that consumed substantial development time while generating no immediate revenue, creating cash flow pressures that had not been adequately anticipated during the planning phase. Customer support operations emerged as an unexpected complexity when early pilot implementations revealed that enterprise clients required ongoing technical assistance and algorithm customization that exceeded the standardized service offerings I had originally projected. Each client engagement demanded individualized attention for data integration, performance optimization, and results interpretation that limited the scalability advantages I had expected from software platform licensing model. The quality control challenges became apparent when pilot implementations with regional retailers generated results that varied significantly based on data quality, seasonal factor, and integration approaches that affected algorithmic performance in ways that were difficult to predict during initial client presentation. Maintaining consistent prediction accuracy across diverse client environments required developing standardized implementation methodologies and comprehensive testing protocols that increased project complexity and resource requirements. The hiring necessity emerged earlier than projected when I realized that Sterling Analytics required specialized expertise in enterprise sales, customer success management, and technical support that complemented but differed substantially from the algorithmic development capabilities I possessed through academic research and analytical consulting experience. Recruiting qualified professionals within startup budget constraints proved challenging when competing against established technology companies that offered offered comprehensive benefits packages and career advancement opportunities. The partnership evaluation process began when potential collaboration opportunities emerged with technology consulting firms and software integration specialists who possessed enterprise client relationships and implementation expertise that could accelerate Sterling Analytics market penetration. These discussions revealed complex trade-offs between maintaining full control over intellectual property and leveraging external capabilities that could reduce customer acquisition costs while expanding addressable market opportunities. The investor interest that emerged during the second quarter of operations created opportunities for capital infusion that could fund accelerated growth while introducing complexity around equity, dilution, and strategic control that had not been primary considerations during initial business planning. Venture capital firms specializing in artificial intelligence applications expressed preliminary interest in Sterling Analytics technology platform after observing early client implementations and competitive positioning relative to established market research providers. The market validation occurred through pilot program results that demonstrated algorithmic effectiveness exceeded projections when implemented properly within enterprise environments that provided adequate data quality and integrations. Customer behavior prediction accuracy rates consistently exceeded 85% across multiple retail categories, while reducing marketing campaign costs by an average of 32% for clients who completed full implementation cycle. However, the implementation challenges revealed that achieving optimal results required client organizations to modify existing data collection and analysis processes in ways that created internal resistance and extended deployment timelines beyond initial expectations. Change management within large organizations proved more complex than technical integration, requiring educational initiatives and stakeholder alignment that increased project scope and resource requirement. The competitive intelligence gathering became essential when established market research firms began recruiting machine learning specialists and developing alternative approaches to consumer behavior analysis that leveraged their existing client relationships and operational infrastructure. Understanding competitive capabilities and positioning strategies became critical for maintaining algorithmic advantages while developing marketing messages that differentiated Sterling Analytics offerings from emerging alternatives. The performance metrics development provided ongoing feedback about progress toward revenue objectives while identifying operational areas that required attention and improvement. Customer acquisition costs, implementation success rates, and client satisfaction scores revealed patterns that guided strategic adjustments to sales processes, technical development priorities, and service delivery approaches that affected both immediate performance and long-term sustainability. The psychological pressures of managing complex technical development while building enterprise client relationships and maintaining financial sustainability created stress levels that exceeded expectations during the planning phase. Entrepreneurial isolation became apparent when family skepticism combined with operational challenges to create doubt about execution capabilities and market opportunity assessment that had motivated the original commitment to independent technology platform development. The crisis point approached during the 8th month of operations, when accumulated challenges created serious questions about whether Sterling Analytics could achieve sustainable revenue generation within the financial runway available for continued development. Client acquisition progress remained slower than projected, while operational expenses continued exceeding conservative estimates, creating pressure to either secure additional funding or modify business strategy to reduce resource requirements and accelerate cash flow generation. The fundamental question became whether to persevere through implementation challenges that were testing every assumption about market demand and execution capability, or acknowledge that family recommendations about licensing arrangements might have reflected more accurate assessment of entrepreneurial risks than my optimistic projections about independent technology platform development opportunities. The rapid skill development that Sterling Analytics demanded transformed my understanding of technology entrepreneurship, from theoretical concepts into practical competencies that determined whether the company would achieve sustainable market positioning or remain another promising startup that failed during execution phase. The learning process occurred under intense pressure when algorithm development, enterprise sales, customer implementation, and competitive positioning required simultaneous attention, while financial resources diminished with each passing month. The enterprise sales methodology emerged as the most critical capability gap when I realized that selling sophisticated analytical software to Fortune 500 companies required entirely different approaches than the academic presentations and consulting proposals I had delivered during my tenure at Data Trend Solutions. Enterprise decision makers evaluated vendor proposals according to risk management frameworks that prioritized proven implementation records and comprehensive support capabilities over technological innovation or superior algorithmic performance. The first breakthrough in sales process development occurred through studying successful technology companies that had achieved rapid enterprise market penetration despite lacking established industry relationships or extensive track record. Companies like Salesforce and HubSpot had revolutionized their respective markets by demonstrating clear value propositions through pilot programs that generated measurable business outcomes within limited timeframes and budget allocations. The pilot program strategy that emerged from this research involved offering comprehensive consumer behavior analysis implementations at significantly reduced rates for enterprise clients willing to provide detailed case study documentation and reference testimonials for subsequent business development efforts. This approach required substantial upfront investment while generating minimal immediate revenue, yet it provided the market validation and credibility that enterprise sales processes demanded. The customer success management discipline became essential when pilot implementations revealed that algorithmic effectiveness depended heavily on data quality, integration approaches, and organizational change management that extended far beyond technical deployment consideration. Enterprise clients required ongoing consultation for optimizing algorithm parameters, interpreting results, and modifying marketing strategies based on consumer behavior insights that challenged conventional wisdom about customer targeting and campaign development. Learning customer success methodologies required developing expertise in project management, stakeholder communication, and organizational psychology that complemented but differed substantially from the technical capabilities I had acquired through academic research and algorithm development experience. Each client engagement taught lessons about enterprise software adoption patterns while revealing additional service capabilities that would be necessary for achieving sustainable competitive differentiation. The partnership development skills became crucial when I recognized that Sterling Analytics required complementary capabilities in system integration, data management, and industry-specific consulting that would be expensive and time-consuming to develop internally while competing against established technology vendors. Strategic partnerships with specialized consulting firms and software integration companies could provide access to enterprise client relationships while sharing implementation responsibilities and technical support requirements. The first significant partnership opportunity emerged with TechVantage Solutions, a Denver-based consulting firm that specialized in marketing technology implementations for major retail corporations. Their team possessed deep expertise in customer data platforms and marketing automation systems that complemented Sterling Analytics' algorithmic capabilities while providing established relationships with potential enterprise clients who were actively seeking improved consumer behavior analysis solutions. The partnership negotiation process required learning complex contract structures that balanced intellectual property protection with revenue sharing arrangements while establishing clear boundaries around client relationship management and technical support responsibility. These agreements represented my first exposure to sophisticated business development arrangements that would determine long-term
long-term strategic positioning and competitive advantages. The competitive intelligence capabilities developed through systematic analysis of established market research firms and emerging artificial intelligence companies that were targeting similar market opportunities. Understanding competitive positioning strategies, pricing models, and service delivery approaches became essential for identifying differentiation opportunities while avoiding direct confrontation with vendors who possessed substantial resource advantages and established client relationships. The market research revealed that enterprise clients increasingly demanded integrated analytical platforms that combined multiple data sources and prediction capabilities rather than specialized solutions that addressed individual aspects of consumer behavior analysis. This insight guided product development priorities toward comprehensive platforms that could replace multiple vendor relationships while providing superior analytical accuracy and implementation support. The technical architecture planning evolved from academic algorithm development toward scalable software platforms that could support multiple concurrent enterprise implementations while maintaining performance standards and security protocols that met corporate information technology requirements. Learning cloud computing architectures, database optimization techniques, and user interface design principles required developing expertise across multiple technical disciplines simultaneously. The intellectual property protection strategies became critical when competitive responses from established firms indicated that algorithmic innovations represented valuable assets that required comprehensive protection through patent applications, trade secret protocol, and licensing agreement structures. Working with intellectual property attorneys provided education about technology commercialization strategies while establishing legal foundations for sustainable competitive advantage. The financial management capabilities expanded beyond basic budgeting and cash flow projections towards sophisticated models that incorporated enterprise sales cycles, customer acquisition costs, and a lifetime value calculations that reflected the complex economics of software platform licensing and ongoing service delivery. Understanding unit economics and scalability factors became essential for strategic planning and investor communication. The investor relations skills developed when venture capital interest required preparing comprehensive business plans, financial projections, and market analysis documentation that demonstrated Sterling Analytics' growth potential while addressing due diligence, questions about competitive positioning, intellectual property protection, and management team capability. These presentations represented opportunities to secure growth capital while testing strategic assumptions against investor expertise and market knowledge. The team-building requirements accelerated when client implementations revealed that sustainable growth required specialized capabilities and enterprise sales, customer success management, technical support, and algorithm optimization that exceeded individual capacity for direct management. Recruiting qualified professionals within startup budget constraints demanded developing expertise in talent acquisition, compensation planning, and organizational development. The first key hire involved recruiting Sarah Chen, a former enterprise sales director at Oracle, who possessed extensive experience selling analytical software to Fortune 500 marketing departments. Her expertise in complex sales cycles and stakeholder management provided immediate credibility with enterprise prospects, while establishing professional sales processes that complemented the technical demonstration capabilities I had developed through pilot program implementation. The second critical addition was Marcus Rodriguez, a customer success manager with background in marketing technology implementations, who could ensure that enterprise clients achieved optimal results from Sterling Analytics deployments while identifying expansion opportunities within existing accounts.
His experience with organizational change management and user adoption strategies addressed implementation challenges that had emerged during early pilot programs. The product development methodology evolved from individual algorithm optimization toward collaborative development processes that incorporated customer feedback, competitive analysis, and market demand signals into systematic enhancement cycles. Learning agile development practices and customer-driven feature prioritization required adjusting technical perfectionism toward market-responsive iteration that balanced algorithmic sophistication with practical implementation requirements. The marketing strategy development involved learning digital marketing techniques, content creation, and thought leadership positioning that could generate enterprise prospect interest while demonstrating sterling analytics expertise in consumer behavior analysis. Creating educational content about machine learning applications for marketing professionals required developing communication skills that translated technical concepts into business value proposition. The industry conference participation provided opportunities to establish thought leadership positioning while building relationships with potential enterprise clients and strategic partners. Speaking engagements about artificial intelligence applications for consumer behavior prediction generated market visibility while demonstrating the expertise and innovation that differentiated Sterling Analytics from conventional market research provider. The regulatory compliance capabilities became essential when enterprise implementations required adhering to data privacy regulations, industry security standards, and corporate governance requirements that affected algorithm deployment and customer data management. Learning GDPR compliance, SOC 2 certification requirements, and industry-specific regulations required developing expertise in legal and compliance considerations that complemented technical development priority. The performance measurement systems evolved from basic revenue tracking toward comprehensive analytics that monitored customer acquisition effectiveness, implementation success rates, algorithm performance metrics, and competitive positioning indicator. These dashboards provided real-time feedback about business development progress while identifying operational areas that required attention and improvement. The crisis management skills developed when operational challenges threatened client implementations and competitive pressures created urgency around strategic positioning and resource allocation decisions. Learning to maintain stakeholder confidence while addressing serious problems required developing communication strategies and problem-solving approaches that preserved relationships while implementing corrective action. The strategic planning capabilities expanded beyond technical development toward comprehensive business strategy that incorporated market analysis, competitive positioning, partnership opportunities, and growth financing consideration. Quarterly planning cycles that balanced immediate operational requirements with long-term strategic objectives required developing executive decision-making skills that considered multiple complex factors simultaneously. The leadership development occurred through managing increasing organizational complexity while maintaining entrepreneurial agility and technical innovation focus. Learning to delegate effectively while preserving quality standards and strategic direction required developing management capabilities that complemented the technical expertise and analytical thinking that had enabled Sterling Analytics' initial development. The accumulated learning represents formation from individual contributor with specialized technical skills toward technology executive with comprehensive business capabilities that could guide Sterling Analytics through scaling challenges while maintaining competitive advantages and market leadership positioning. Each new competency revealed additional areas requiring development while demonstrating that extraordinary outcomes demand extraordinary personal growth and capability expansion beyond original expertise area. The crisis that would either destroy Sterling Analytics or forge it into something extraordinary began during the second week of January, when three simultaneous challenges converged to create what felt like systematic failure across every aspect of the business. I had spent 18 months building the financial runway that had seemed adequate during optimistic planning phases was approaching depletion, while enterprise sales cycles continued, extending beyond projections and operational expenses exceeded conservative estimates by substantial margin. The first devastating blow arrived through an email from Jennifer Walsh at Data Trend Solution informing me that Mountain Peak Outdoors had decided to terminate their pilot program after 6 months of implementation efforts that had consumed significant resources while producing results that management considered insufficient for justifying expanded deployment. The cancellation eliminated our most prominent case study while raising questions about algorithmic effectiveness that could affect subsequent enterprise sales prospects. The Mountain Peak implementation had served as the cornerstone of our enterprise sales strategy, demonstrating consumer behavior prediction capabilities that exceeded conventional market research methodologies, while providing quantifiable improvements in marketing campaign effectiveness and customer acquisition cost. Losing this reference client created immediate credibility challenges for ongoing sales processes, while eliminating projected revenue that had been essential for maintaining positive cash flow projection. The technical analysis of the Mountain Peak failure revealed that algorithm performance had been compromised by data quality issues and integration approaches that had not been adequately addressed during the implementation planning phase. The client's existing customer database contained incomplete transaction histories and demographic information that reduced prediction accuracy below the levels we had demonstrated during initial pilot testing with clean datasets. The organizational change management challenges at Mountain Peak had proven more complex than anticipated when marketing department personnel resisted modifying established campaign development processes to incorporate algorithmic recommendations that contradicted conventional targeting strategy. The human factor in technology adoption had been underestimated during our implementation planning, creating performance problems that reflected organizational resistance rather than technical limitations. The second crisis emerged when TechVantage Solutions informed us that their partnership agreement would not be renewed for the following fiscal year due to strategic realignment that prioritized relationships with established technology vendors over emerging companies that lacked proven track records and comprehensive service capability. The partnership termination eliminated our primary channel for enterprise client acquisition, while reducing implementation support capabilities that had been essential for managing complex deployment projects. The TechVantage relationship had provided access to enterprise decision-makers who possessed budgets and authority for significant technology investments, while offering implementation expertise that complemented our algorithmic capability. Losing this partnership required developing alternative approaches for customer acquisition and technical support that would demand resources we could no longer afford given the deteriorating financial situation. The partnership dissolution also revealed that our strategic positioning had been overly dependent on external relationships rather than building internal capabilities that could provide sustainable competitive advantages, independent of third-party collaboration. The vulnerability created by relying on partners for essential business functions became apparent when their strategic priorities shifted in ways that eliminated our access to critical resources and market opportunity. The third catastrophic development occurred when competitive intelligence revealed that Nielsen had successfully recruited Dr. Amanda Foster, the former head of machine learning research at MIT, to lead their new consumer behavior analytics division. Foster's reputation and technical expertise provided Nielsen with credibility for challenging our algorithmic superiority, while their established client relationships and operational infrastructure offered implementation advantages that we could not match. The Nielsen competitive response represented the nightmare scenario we had attempted to avoid through rapid market penetration and intellectual property protection strategies. Their combination of technical talent, financial resource, and established market presence created formidable competition that could replicate our innovations while leveraging organizational advantages that would be impossible for Sterling Analytics to match within our current resource constraints. The announcement of Nielsen's artificial intelligence initiative generated immediate market attention that positioned them as the innovative leader in consumer behavior prediction, while characterizing Sterling Analytics as another startup attempting to compete in markets dominated by established players with superior capabilities and proven track records. The accumulated financial pressure reached critical levels when January expenses exceeded revenue by $43,000, while cash reserves diminished to levels that would support operations for fewer than 60 days without immediate revenue generation or emergency capital infusion. The burn rate calculations revealed that achieving break-even would require either dramatic expense reduction or revenue acceleration that appeared unlikely given current sales pipeline projections. The personal financial implications became severe when I realized that Sterling Analytics' failure would consume the personal guarantees I had provided for business credit lines, while eliminating assets that had been accumulated over 5 years of careful savings and investment planning. The entrepreneurial risk that had seemed manageable during optimistic planning phases now threatened long-term financial security in ways that extended far beyond immediate business concerns. The relationship deterioration with family members accelerated when monthly dinner conversations increasingly focused on Sterling Analytics struggles rather than achievements, while their subtle expressions of concern transformed into explicit recommendations that I consider strategic alternatives before additional resources were consumed by a venture that appeared increasingly unlikely to achieve sustainable profitability. My mother's questions during these gatherings reflected careful balance between supportive encouragement and practical concern about decisions that seemed to validate her original skepticism about adding stable employment for technology entrepreneurship in competitive markets. Her suggestions about exploring acquisition opportunities or licensing arrangements carried undertones of relief that I might finally acknowledge the wisdom of conservative approaches she had recommended from the beginning. Natalie's responses revealed mixture of sympathy and vindication when she offered contacts at Morrison Marketing Group, who might be interested in acquiring Sterling Analytics intellectual property for integration into their service offerings for enterprise clients. Her assistance was genuinely intended to help while simultaneously confirming her assessment that independent technology platform development had been unrealistic given competitive dynamics and resource requirements. The psychological toll of sustained pressure and accumulating setbacks created health effects that manifested through sleep disruption, appetite changes, and concentration difficulties that affected daily functioning and decision-making capability. The isolation that had been manageable during periods of progress became overwhelming when professional challenges combined with relationship strain to eliminate most sources of emotional support and encouragement. The investor meeting that had been scheduled for late January became exercises in damage control rather than growth capital discussions when due diligence revealed the client cancellations, partnership terminations, and competitive pressures that threatened Sterling Analytics' viability. Venture capital partners who had expressed preliminary interest requested updated financial projections and market analysis that reflected current realities rather than optimistic assumptions about customer acquisition and competitive positioning. The revised business plan that emerged from this analysis painted scenarios that required either immediate strategic pivoting or acknowledgement that market conditions had shifted in ways that eliminated the opportunities that had motivated Sterling Analytics' establishment. The investor feedback suggested that successful outcomes would require substantial capital investment and management team expansion that exceeded their risk tolerance for early-stage companies facing established competition. The employee conversations with Sarah Chen and Marcus Rodriguez required transparency about financial constraints and strategic uncertainties, while attempting to maintain team morale and commitment during a period when their employment security was questionable. Both team members possessed alternatives with established technology companies that offered stability and career advancement opportunities that Sterling Analytics could no longer guarantee. The customer support obligations for remaining enterprise clients required maintaining service quality and technical assistance while operating with reduced resources and uncertain continuity. The professional responsibility to existing clients demanded continued investment in support capabilities, even when financial sustainability was questionable, creating additional pressure on already strained cash flow management. The market analysis that had originally supported Sterling Analytics development required fundamental reassessment when competitive dynamics and customer adoption patterns differed substantially from initial projections. The assumptions about enterprise demand for advanced analytical capabilities and willingness to adopt innovative technologies from startup vendors proved overly optimistic given organizational risk tolerance and procurement preference. The intellectual property evaluation became critical when strategic alternatives required understanding the market value of algorithms and technology platforms that had been developed over 18 months of intensive effort. Patent applications that had been filed for competitive protection now represented potential assets for licensing or acquisition arrangements that could provide financial recovery while transferring future development opportunities to other organizations. The decision point approached where continued operation would require either emergency capital infusion that appeared unlikely given current performance metrics, or strategic restructuring that would acknowledge fundamental flaws in original market assessment and business model assumption. The choice between perseverance and prudent limitation of losses represented the ultimate test of entrepreneurial conviction versus rational risk management. The valley of despair had arrived where every indicator suggested that family recommendations about conservative licensing strategies had reflected more accurate assessment of market realities than my optimistic projections about independent technology platform development. The accumulated evidence appeared to confirm that extraordinary outcomes were not achievable through determination and technical innovation when competitive dynamics and resource requirements exceeded individual capabilities and financial constraints. The fundamental question became whether to continue fighting against accumulating evidence of strategic failure, or acknowledge that sometimes the most difficult decision involves accepting defeat before additional resources are consumed by ventures that cannot achieve sustainable success regardless of effort and commitment invested in their development. The transformation that would validate every risk I had taken and every relationship I had strained began with an unexpected phone call on February 14. Michael Harrison, the Chief Technology Officer at Velocity Retail Corporation, one of the largest e-commerce platforms in North America. His message was direct and urgent. Velocity needed to speak with Sterling Analytics immediately about a consumer behavior prediction challenge that their internal data science team and 3 established consulting firms had been unable to solve effectively. The opportunity emerged from Velocity's struggle with cart abandonment optimization, a problem that was costing them an estimated $47 million annually in lost revenue. Their sophisticated e-commerce platform processed over 2 million daily transactions, yet traditional analytical approaches had failed to predict which customers would complete purchases versus those who would abandon their shopping carts before finalizing transaction. The economic impact of this prediction gap affected their entire business model, while creating competitive disadvantages against retailers who achieved higher conversion rates. Harrison explained that Velocity had tested predictive models from McKinsey, implemented algorithms from Nielsen's new artificial intelligence division, and engaged with 4 specialized consulting firms over the previous 18 months. Each approach had provided incremental improvements that fell substantially short of the accuracy rates and business impact that justified the substantial investments in advanced analytical capability. The conversation revealed that Velocity's data science leadership had discovered Sterling Analytics through academic publications and industry conference presentations, rather than traditional vendor outreach processes. Their research into machine learning applications for consumer behavior prediction had identified our algorithmic approaches as fundamentally different from conventional methodologies that other vendors were implementing with limited success. The validation request was comprehensive and immediate. Velocity wanted Sterling Analytics to analyze a representative dataset containing transaction histories, customer demographics, and behavioral patterns for 500,000 customers over a 12-month period. The analysis would be compared against their best-performing existing models while measuring prediction accuracy, implementation complexity, and potential business impact across multiple product categories and seasonal periods. The technical challenge exceeded anything Sterling Analytics had attempted previously in terms of scale, complexity, and performance expectation. Velocity's dataset contained variables and interaction patterns that would test our algorithms under conditions that closely approximated the enterprise implementations we had been developing, but had not yet deployed at comparable scale with demanding performance criteria. The timeline was aggressive but manageable. Velocity required preliminary results within 10 days, comprehensive analysis within 3 weeks, and implementation recommendations within 30 days. The schedule reflected urgency that suggested significant internal pressure to solve problems that were affecting quarterly performance, while competitive pressures demanded immediate improvements in conversion optimization. The opportunity represented potential validation
that could transform Sterling Analytics from struggling startup to proven enterprise solution provider, while generating revenue that would eliminate immediate financial pressures and provide foundation for sustainable growth. Success with Velocity would create the reference client and performance documentation that enterprise sales processes required for competitive differentiation. The analytical work began immediately with comprehensive data examination that revealed why conventional approaches had achieved limited success with Velocity's optimization challenge. Their customer behavior patterns demonstrated complexity levels that exceeded the capabilities of traditional statistical methods and machine learning applications that had been designed for simpler prediction problems with fewer variables and interaction effects. The cart abandonment prediction problem required analyzing real-time behavioral signals, historical purchasing patterns, seasonal variations, product category preferences, and pricing sensitivity factors that operated simultaneously across different timescales and decision-making contexts. The computational requirements exceeded typical analytical applications, while demanding prediction accuracy rates that would generate measurable business impact. The breakthrough occurred during the second week of analysis, when our algorithms identified behavioral pattern clusters that conventional approaches had missed entirely. The machine learning models revealed that cart abandonment decisions were influenced by subtle combinations of browsing behavior, time of day patterns, price comparison activities, and inventory availability signals that created predictable decision trees when analyzed using appropriate mathematical frameworks. More significantly, the algorithms could predict individual customer abandonment probability in real time during shopping sessions, enabling dynamic intervention strategies that could modify pricing, product recommendations, or promotional offers to influence purchasing decisions before customers left the platform. This capability represented fundamental advancement over traditional approaches that analyzed historical patterns without providing actionable insights for immediate conversion optimization. The preliminary results exceeded Velocity's expectations, while demonstrating competitive advantages that their existing vendors could not replicate. Our algorithms achieved cart abandonment prediction accuracy of 89%, compared to their best-performing existing models that typically achieved accuracy rates between 62 and 67% when tested against actual customer behavior outcomes. The business impact projections were extraordinary. Implementing Sterling Analytics algorithms across Velocity's entire platform could reduce cart abandonment rates by an estimated 23%, while improving conversion optimization by 18%. The financial implications suggested annual revenue increases exceeding $31 million, while reducing customer acquisition costs through improved targeting effectiveness. Dr. Harrison's response to the preliminary findings reflected amazement and immediate strategic interest. The Velocity executive team scheduled an emergency presentation for the following week to review comprehensive results while discussing implementation timelines and licensing arrangements that would provide exclusive access to Sterling Analytics capabilities within their competitive market segment. The presentation preparation required developing business case documentations that demonstrated not only technical superiority, but also implementation feasibility and competitive sustainability that would justify substantial investment in advanced analytical capability. The materials needed to address concerns about vendor reliability, scalability requirements, and ongoing support that enterprise procurement processes demand. The Velocity headquarters presentation occurred in their executive conference room, with attendance that included the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and Senior Vice Presidents from e-commerce operations and strategic planning. The audience represented decision-making authority for technology investments that could transform their competitive positioning, while establishing Sterling Analytics as their primary analytical partner. The demonstration began with technical explanation of algorithmic approaches that differentiated Sterling Analytics methodologies from conventional predictive modeling techniques that other vendors had implemented without achieving comparable results. The presentation emphasized mathematical innovations and computational capabilities that created sustainable competitive advantages rather than incremental improvements to existing approaches. The business case presentation focused on quantifiable impact projections that demonstrated return on investment, timelines, and competitive advantages that justified premium pricing for access to proprietary analytical capability. The financial analysis included conservative estimates that exceeded Velocity's performance improvement requirements, while providing substantial margin for implementation challenges and market variation. The competitive analysis addressed concerns about sustainability and replication by explaining intellectual property protection and continuous improvement strategies that would maintain Sterling Analytics' advantages even when competitors attempted to develop alternative approaches. The discussion emphasized ongoing research and development capabilities that would extend technological leadership rather than simply defending existing innovation. The implementation timeline presentation outlined deployment strategies that would minimize disruption to existing operations, while achieving performance improvements within quarterly reporting periods that affected executive compensation and shareholder expectation. The phased approach balanced immediate results with comprehensive optimization that would generate sustained competitive advantages. The executive questions revealed sophisticated understanding of analytical capabilities and competitive dynamics, while expressing concerns about vendor reliability and support capabilities that reflected previous experiences with technology implementations that had failed to achieve projected outcomes. Their due diligence reflected appropriate caution about strategic technology partnerships that would affect fundamental business operations. The negotiation process that followed demonstrated Velocity's commitment to securing Sterling Analytics capabilities while establishing partnership terms that would provide mutual benefit and shared success incentive. The licensing agreement structure included performance guarantees and revenue-sharing arrangements that aligned Sterling Analytics compensation with measurable business impact rather than simple technology access fee. The contract terms exceeded our most optimistic projections, while establishing Sterling Analytics as Velocity's exclusive analytical partner for consumer behavior prediction across their entire e-commerce platform. The initial implementation would generate annual licensing revenue of $2.8 million, while providing case study documentation and reference testimonials that would support subsequent enterprise sales effort. The validation extended beyond immediate financial impact to establish market credibilities that would transform Sterling Analytics' competitive positioning within the enterprise software sector. Success with Velocity would demonstrate scalability and effectiveness that addressed concerns about startup reliability, while proving that our algorithmic innovations could deliver extraordinary results for sophisticated enterprise clients with demanding performance requirements. The announcement of the Velocity partnership generated immediate industry attention that positioned Sterling Analytics as the innovative leader in consumer behavior prediction, while attracting interest from other enterprise prospects who had been monitoring our progress. The reference client and performance documentation eliminated major barriers that had complicated previous sales processes, while creating competitive advantages that established vendors could not immediately replicate. The breakthrough moment had arrived when persistent effort and accumulated learning converged to create tangible evidence that validated every assumption about market opportunity and competitive positioning that had motivated Sterling Analytics' establishment, despite widespread skepticism and accumulated challenges that had threatened business survival. The Velocity partnership announcement triggered immediate transformation across every aspect of Sterling Analytics operations, creating momentum that transformed 18 months of struggle into rapid acceleration, creating momentum that transformed 18 months of struggle into rapid acceleration from one of North America's largest e-commerce platforms, generated credibilities that eliminated barriers which had previously complicated enterprise sales processes, while attracting resources and opportunities that would have been impossible to access without proven implementation success. The immediate financial impact provided stabilities that enabled strategic planning beyond survival considerations for the first time since Sterling Analytics' establishment.
The initial payment from Velocity covered operational expenses for 8 months, while subsequent licensing fees would generate positive cash flow that supported aggressive expansion plans and competitive positioning initiatives. The revenue security eliminated psychological pressure that had affected decision-making while creating foundation for sustainable growth strategies. The market recognition accelerated rapidly when industry publications identified Sterling Analytics as the breakthrough technology that had solved Velocity's cart abandonment optimization challenge, where established vendors had failed. Forbes published a detailed analysis of our algorithmic innovations, while Harvard Business Review featured a case study examining how machine learning applications could revolutionize consumer behavior prediction across multiple industries. The academic and business media attention positioned Sterling Analytics as thought leadership authority while generating enterprise prospect interest. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.